Government has, of course, announced the new manufacturing policy. We are talking about new investment and manufacturing zone. We have to see how quickly we propel investment in the manufacturing. Government has now announced the scheme of giving investment allowance to those who are making investment of more than 100 crores. And our view is that this limit should be brought down. Any investment in manufacturing may be given an investment allowance. The need of the hour is that manufacturing is expanded and the production processes are modernized. And for that, whatever incentive needs to be given to the industry, that should be top on the priority of the government. We are toying with the idea of bringing exports into the priority sector lending. Of course, we know that for a foreign bank with less than 20 branches, it is still into priority sector lending. But for the nationalized bank and for foreign bank with more than 20 branches, it is no longer under priority sector lending. The Ministry of Commerce and Ministry of Finance both has favored the idea. They have taken up the matter with the Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank of India is of the view that if export is brought under the priority sector lending, there may be less flow of money to other deserving priority sector, and their concern is quite genuine. We are toying with the idea that within the 40% cap for the priority sector, can we earmark 5% only for the export sector so that other sectors who would require the priority sector lending are also given the same. We are also toying with the idea of what was recommended by Padmanabhan committee that any shortfall in meeting the priority sector lending which has to be deposited by bank with the Reserve Bank of India can be used as a corpus for financing the export sector. Beside the availability of credit, cost of credit is equally important. We have seen that with the adoption of the base rate by the bank in July 2010, the cost of credit has gone up by around 50 to 60%. Of course, we know that cost has to be with reference to your deposit rates, but for export sector, you cannot just argue on your domestic disability. You have to compete with your competitors. And if your competitors are getting credit at 5%, you cannot provide the same kind of support to the industry. To that extent, your exporter will be less competitive. Government has come up with the interest subvention scheme where they are providing 3% interest subvention to small and medium sectors in the manufacturing and certain labor intensive sectors like handloom, handicraft, carpet, sports goods and ready-made garments. My request to the Reserve Bank of India has been that please enforce a uniformity. Many of the banks are providing upfront interest subvention. Some are providing interest subvention at a quarterly period. Some are giving it after a year and some are waiting for the government to release them the fund and then only the interest subvention is passed on to the exporter. Reserve Bank of India instructions are very clear that interest subvention has to be provided to the exporter upfront. The fourth issue on this front has been the gold card scheme. The Reserve Bank of India introduced this scheme in 2003. But over a period of time, many of the banks, for obvious reasons, have put it into total disuse. Of course, some banks are very bullish about this. I think we need to popularize this scheme because the scheme entails a number of benefits. You get 3 years straightway limits. Then limit is automatically renewed. You get 25% ad hoc benefit, where if you get an additional order, you can get automatic enhancement in the limit and you get 0.5% on the interest burden also. We all know that when the going get tough and international market is difficult, most of the SMEs, they cut on their marketing cost. If you look at the marketing scheme of some of the developed countries, take for example Australia, which under Austrade, or from Malaysia, Korea, Turkey, they have huge marketing support for the SMEs. In India, we have two schemes known as Marketing Development Assistance and Market Access Initiative. And the total corpus available there is 150 crore. We are talking about an export of 18 lakhs crore. How that export can be sustained by a corpus of just 150 crores. From FIO, we have now taken up with the government to come with an export development fund, and we said that the corpus of the fund should be equivalent to 1% of your preceding year's export. So we are talking about a fund of close to 18 to 20,000 crore so that we go aggressively in the market. One of the reasons is that we are suffering on account of signing of many of the FTAs because we have not been able to encash on exports. On the contrary, with higher duties advantage, the other countries have taken the gain and it has hit some of the manufacturing also. So I'm sure the new government will look into it, and this is something which will help the export sector in a big way. We have also floated a scheme that for wherever the government is entering into the free trade agreement or comprehensive economic partnership or cooperation agreement, those countries should be part of the focus market scheme where you are entitled for an additional benefit. All those countries where we see that tariff will be come down to 0% next to 2 to 3 years may be brought under the market link focus protected scheme, so that Indian enters into those market and establish themselves when the zero duty benefit is available to them. The other issue which is very important for us is the issue relating to the transaction cost also. We know that this is one of the reasons why Indian exports are less competitive. The government of India admits that transaction cost is in the range of 8 to 10%. Now, if you apply it on an export of $312 billion, it converts into $25 to $30 billion. Assuming that 50% of the cost is addressable, if the government is able to address that, government can provide $12 to $15 billion support to the industry without any cost to the exchequer. Of course, government has taken few steps, but I think we have to demonstrate the will that we want to curtail this cost. And I personally feel we need to have a definite time frame for effective EDI among all the 13 community partners who are involved in international trade. We have seen that while standalone EDI is available both in customs and the DGFT and some other agencies, but still the documents are not flowing online to all the agencies. And once that happens, I'm sure the transaction cost to a large extent will be addressed. We have also talked about 24/7 facility, which was announced by the custom with much fanfare. But if you go through the fine print of the scheme, it only covers your factory stuff container and free shipping bill, which are not more than 15% of the total shipment. If we are talking about facilitation, we have to extend it to major scheme like duty drawback, advance authorization, EOE and SCZ scheme. This is something which has been flagged to the government. I am sure that this will be high on the agenda of the government with a view to facilitate trade. Let me also draw a scheme which has not enthused the exporter, and we have flagged them to the Department of Commerce. It is really strange that we have an accelerated client program where custom is supposed to provide you green channel facility. In India, we have close to 1 lakh importer and exporter. Only 312 have been registered under the accelerated client program, a scheme which is running in the 9th year. And that's why we told Department of Revenue there is something basically flawed with the scheme, and one has to revisit the scheme so that it can be marketed well to the export sector. Same is true of their new scheme of authorized economic operator, which talks about giving you facilitation not only in India but also abroad. There are just 3 companies who have registered under the scheme. In a small port town of Antwerp, where we visited last year, they have 600 authorized economic operator operating into the country. And I'm sure that if we look into these schemes closely, we will be able to market them well. One of the reasons for not doing good in export has been the procedural complexity. We have 7 documents which are required for exports. Most of the countries, including the countries in EU, work on a single document. I'm sure that the Government of India, which has constituted a committee for moving to a single document, will have a specific time frame where they will put this under the priority. Let me also put the issues relating to the new foreign trade policy. We are sure that the government would be announcing it soon. We did homework for the Department of Commerce, where we are of the view that the government should look at an export target of $750 billion by 2018-19, and we have given the bifurcation from which sector the $750 billion will come. There are number of issues which needs to be addressed by the government. But I think the biggest challenge for India is that we have to move out of the segment where the world major trade is not happening. Unfortunately, we are placed in the segment where there is not much elasticity. Most of the world trade is happening what has been defined as high technology sector. The word is a misnomer because when they define high technology sector, they are not only including the automobile, high technology, machinery, they include even petroleum products into that. But within that high technology sector, our share is just 0.4%. And that sector contributes to 65% of the world trade. So if we have to grow big, we have to change gears and move into the high technology sector. So with these words, I thank all of you for a very patient hearing. Thank you very much.